Hey, it's Marcel. I am geeked up about my new book that just got released worldwide. If you haven't heard, it's called Humane Leadership: Lead with Radical Love, Be a Kick-Ass Boss. Now, if you love the podcast, you're going to love the book. I spent several years researching the best skills and behaviors of people leaders that engage employees and drive results through a humane approach of empowering humanity, developing trust, and getting the best out of people. It's out now. Get it wherever books are sold. Humane Leadership: Lead with Radical Love, Be a Kick-Ass Boss. Check the link in the show notes and grab your copy. Welcome to the Love in Action Podcast. I'm your host, executive coach, speaker, and author, Marcel Schwantes. I believe that when we show up with our full humanity to work and lead from a place of love, joy, purpose, care, and inclusion, it's going to make a radical difference in your leadership, your business, and your bottom line. This is a show about actionable, practical love, the verb, as a leadership and business strategy. Let's get rolling. Hey gang, welcome back. Glad you're here, and welcome if you are new and a first-time guest on or a listener on the show. We hope that you're going to enjoy this episode. I think you will, and we hope that you'll come back again soon. So you know that hosting this podcast has many perks. Honestly, it's quite a privilege, and I don't take this gig for granted. Not for 1 second. I get to speak with the world's leading voices on leadership, culture, engagement. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes I'm starstruck, right? I've had people like Blanchard on this show, and Stephen M.R. Covey, Amy Edmondson, right? Hubert Joly. And these are people that I look up to. They inform my work as an executive coach. They're out there. They have the anecdotal evidence as well as the case studies and the real world research and evidence to kind of pave the way forward. And today's guest falls under that category of, am I really talking to this person or am I dreaming? Okay. And I'm talking about the wonderful Garry Ridge, a true to life servant leader in every sense of the word. I have been following Garry for probably close to a decade now. And I can tell you that he is one of the most real, most authentic, most humble storytelling CEOs I have ever come across. And he's going to be joining us shortly. So in very Garry Ridge-like fashion, he just wrote a book. It's out now. It's called Any Dumbass Can Do It: Learning Moments from an Everyday CEO of a Multi-Billion-Dollar Company. There's the cover if you're watching on YouTube. That book is now a USA Today's bestseller. And hey, if you ever want to know the story behind how he helped grow WD-40 into one of the most recognized and beloved brands. I mean, go in your garage, you're going to find the blue and yellow can with the red top on it somewhere in your garage, or maybe under your sink in the kitchen or bathroom, right? This is one of those brands that you just can't help. You want to be part of. And you want to stick around because Garry's going to share a lot of stories about how he built that brand over 25 years. And don't forget to pick up the copy of the book as well. Okay, so if you're just hearing about Garry Ridge for the first time, that's okay. Let me share a little bit about him. He served as CEO and chairman of, as I mentioned, the WD-40 company for 25 years. And by the way, side note, in 2017, while I was researching the top global CEOs for an Inc. magazine assignment, I ranked Garry one of the world's top 10 most admired CEOs. Just Google that and you'll find the article. And if you're curious, Garry came in at number 4. Now, Garry serves as the culture coach for his own organization, The Learning Moment, which he founded. Garry helps leaders create workplaces where people feel valued and inspired, and he encourages leaders to turn mistakes into growth opportunities. Gary's core philosophy: when people feel safe, valued, and connected, they do their best work and go home happy, strengthening families, communities, and the world. Boy, let me tell you, we need that more than ever these days. Finally, Garry Ridge now joins us. Welcome to the Love in Action podcast, Garry.
Hey, g'day, Marcel. I had to think, I wonder who this person's talking about there.
Well, boy, it's been a long time coming. We were talking offline, folks. I was telling Garry that I actually talked to him back in 2019 while I was researching my own book. I interviewed him for my book. And in fact, Garry is in my book and with some of his own stories in my book. All right, Garry, we start like this. You ready?
I'm ready.
What's your story?
Well, it's interesting you should ask, because just last night I landed back in the USA after spending 19 days in my homeland. So I'm an Aussie. I grew up in Sydney, Australia. And I was fortunate enough back in 1987 to interact and become part of the WD-40 company. So I was with the company for 35 years. And then in 1994, I was having a conversation with my then boss, the CEO, and I said, "Is there anything else you'd like me to do?" He said, "Do you want to move to the US?" I said, "To do what?" He said, "Why don't you come over here and help me take the blue and yellow can with a little red top to the world?" Back then, the brand was primarily a US brand that had sprinkles around the world. And I disrupted myself and my family, and we moved to the United States. And a couple of years later, I did a master's degree in leadership at the University of San Diego. And that's where I met my mentor and dear friend, Dr. Ken Blanchard, who introduced me to the power of servant leadership. And I took that learning and put it to work. And 25 years later, I refired. I didn't retire. I refired because even though you said I built the brand, I didn't do it. I did it with some marvelous people who went to work every day knowing they were making a contribution to something bigger than themselves. They were learning something new. They were protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and they were going home happy.
Yeah.
And I knew that had worked because back in, 384 BC, a very smart man, Aristotle, said, "Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work." And our role as leaders is to put pleasure in the job. And if you do, you'll get perfection in the work. So my story is just an Aussie bloke.
Spoken like a true humble servant leader. Okay. I see the book in the background here on the wall. I think it's a poster. So let's play with the title, and let's get that out of the way first. Okay. What do you mean by any dumb ass can do it?
Well, firstly, and I was reminded again when I was down in Australia, ASS means donkey. It doesn't mean anybody's posterior and bottom. And I laugh in the US as they take it as being somebody's posterior or bottom. It's not. If you could read it, it's any dumb donkey can do it. And it gets back to something we mentioned when we were chatting offline. The three most important words you ever learn in your life is "I don't know."
Right.
So if you translate "I don't know" into "any dumbass can do it," it means that if you take the position as a leader of not being the smartest person in the room, but being the person that brings out the smarts of the people in the room, you can build cultures where, people enjoy what they do, go home happy, which produce great results, not only for the company, but for the organization and the communities that they operate in. So that's the reason. And I get away with the title, I guess, because again, I'm just an Aussie bloke.
So is that why you titled chapter 8, "Your Dumbassery is your superpower"?
Yeah. I say now, our dumbassery is our superpower. If we're willing to accept the fact that, our role is not to be a manager, but to be a coach and bring out the best in others, then that's our superpower.
Yeah.
And most leaders get all caught up in the fact that, their ego gets out of control and they want to show how smart they are. And that just shuts everybody else down.
Yeah, yeah. Gary, I don't know how many times I have cited that quote of you saying the three most powerful words a leader will ever say is "I don't know." How often have you had to say that in those 25 years? And did people still respect you and follow you?
Yes. And, I used to introduce myself as G'day, I'm Garry Ridge. I'm the consciously incompetent, probably wrong, and roughly right chairman and CEO of WD-40 Company, and I need all the help I could get. And, that's really what it was about is it's okay not to know, but once admitting it, our job is to find out and take the learning and put it to work. So it's not a way of declaring stupidity. It's a way of declaring the reason we need to have curiosity.
Yeah, yeah. Learning is a huge part of your book, but also a huge part of who you are as a leader. I mean, even that you have an organization, the learning moment, and so we create opportunities to grow through learning. So I want to touch on that a little bit because learning is a big part of becoming a servant leader. It's, growth, development, right? So take us back to sort of the origins of Garry Ridge. Did you stumble into servant leadership or were you always a servant leader?
I think I really became more aware of the power of it. And, in the book, in the first chapter, I talk about that plane ride. I was on a Qantas 747. I'd been CEO of WD-40 Company for plus or minus 2 years. I knew with the help of the people in the company how to take the brand globally, how to how to determine what consumers wanted and how to get distribution. But what was always on my mind is, as we build out this company globally, a company where the sun will never set, somewhere around the world at any time during the day, people would be asked to make decisions and take action. And how did we empower them to do that so they didn't have to quack up the hierarchy to get some approval from some masterful leader?
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to do it. And I was on that flight. And as you do when you fly, you read stuff, right? And I read a quote from the Dalai Lama. It said, our purpose in life is to make people happy. If we can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. I thought that makes sense. And then I read that second quote, which was from Aristotle, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. And I thought that makes sense also. And I still didn't know how to do it. And I got back to San Diego. I read an article in the local paper that talked about this master's degree at the University of San Diego that was designed by Dr. Ken Blanchard and the university. And I went to an information session, and Ken got up and he said, most leadership development programs get people in the head. We got to start getting people in the heart.
Yep.
Because the heart is where it came from. And I said, you know what? This must be for me. So here I was already the CEO of a US public company. I went back to school and I started my master's degree, and I learned the power of servant leadership and a lot of other stuff, and started to implement it in the company and, over that 2 year period. And I loved that program, and we learned so much from it that I eventually sent about 35 people from the company over a 20-year period through that program to learn the power of servant leadership. And so that's really where I learned
Yeah.
what it was like and how to put it to work.
Yeah. So I know that the examples go back so a good 20, 25 years, or I should, yeah, about about the time that you took on the role of CEO. But I'm wondering if the lessons are still the same even in 2025. Here's what I'm getting at. Sometimes when we go through a change management process, when we go through culture change from, say, realizing that extracting value from the organization and sucking the life out of people doesn't lend to high performance, doesn't lend to people contributing at their best. So going from maybe a top-down command and control to a bottom-up servant leadership style, sometimes that transition rubs people off the wrong way. Some up in the C-suite may have a quote allergic reaction, and and not follow suit. So then you have some friction. And I have even seen in my own case studies examples, having coached the C-suite, where it gets to the point where two VPs, I'm using one example from a client company, two VPs actually left the company because they decided, hey, I didn't sign up for this. This is not the way I want to manage an organization. And so they filtered out, and there was a time of upheaval, and it was very it hurt the business, because now you have these divisions that are looking for, are needing leadership and guidance, and the whole hiring process, having to identify new leaders, etc. So short version of that, the question that I wanted to ask is, going back to your early stages at WD-40, you found out servant leadership, this is the way to go. This is such an aspirational way of leading a company. How did people respond to that? And did you get some friction and some conflict because of the change management process to servant leadership?
Absolutely. I mean, in any change process, there's a group of people who'll get on board, and there's a group of people that won't get on board.
Right.
And certainly we went through that. I remember clearly, let's ignore Garry. He's drinking too much of Ken Blanchard's Kool-Aid, and that's okay. I mean, and we did have some people who decided that happiness was not in this leadership style. That's okay. Yeah. You can't sprinkle fairy dust on an organization and change the culture. A friend of mine, Charlie Maloof, owns a chain of Ashley furniture stores out in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he has he shared a favorite quote with me, and it was, "A culture is not a microwavable event; it takes a crockpot approach," and it's so true. So if you've decided that you want to build an organization where you implement the basics of what you have to have in place, and it's pretty simple. Do you have an organization where people know and feel like they belong? Do you have an organization where people know and feel like what they do actually matters and makes a difference because they're being recognized for it? Do you have an organization where people are able to make choices, which means you have a hierarchical set of values in place that empower them? And then finally, do you have an organization that has a safety zone, has high psychological safety, because you've reduced fear and replaced it with learning? And that's why we brought in the learning moment. The learning moment was to take fear out of the organization. So they're the basics that you have to have in place. And you can't sprinkle fairy dust on an organization and put them in place. You have to have the framework, and then leadership have to act. Yeah. And people have to see that this is real, not just some fancy slogan and stuff up on a wall that, someone has done because they went to some smart one-day class on how to build culture. It doesn't work like that.
Right. Okay. I want you to get practical here for a minute, because we got a lot of leaders listening, and they want strategies and to implement. So let's find out how to build psychological safety, okay? And maybe you can draw examples from WD-40. And by the way, you were advocating for psychological safety even before the term existed, and Amy Edmondson did her research. So how did you practice psychological safety back in the day?
Well, it is really based on, we have to create an organization where fear is taken out. Now, fear is one of the most disabling emotions we have. It's the opposite to safe. The opposite to safe is fear. So that's why we brought in the learning moment. And we said, we don't make mistakes. We have learning moments. And the definition of the learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly, freely shared to benefit all people. So if we're doing something in the organization that's really working well, let's not covet that. Let's amplify it and broadcast it so others can benefit from it. Equally, if we've tried something that hasn't worked, Let's talk about it and understand why. Let's learn from it. Now, interestingly enough, if you go back to the beginning of WD-40, it all started with learning moments. Back in 1953, there was a fledgling company in San Diego called Rocket Chemical Company. It was in the aviation chemical business. There was a problem with condensation and corrosion in the umbilical cord of the Atlas space rocket. The chemists got together and started to formulate solutions to solve the problem. Formula 1 didn't work. 2 didn't work, 15 didn't work, 25 didn't work, 32 didn't work, 38 didn't work, 39 didn't work, 39 learning moments, number 40 worked. Water displacement, WD, Formula 40, that's how it got its name. So in introducing the learning moment to the organization, I could reflect on the fact of this is how we got here. And in fact, when we rebuilt or relocated our building in San Diego and we refurbished a building we bought, there were stairs that went from the ground floor to the top floor. And I had them numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you got to the top, 39 and the top step said success. So in the organization, we embedded, even in the structure, that this is what we're all about, is learning moments for fine.
That's great. That's great. That's a good story. Sticking with the topic of work culture, I know that you've had some pillars. I think you called it the 4 pillars of a fearless tribe. I'm wondering if we can kind of dig into those pillars.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 4 pillars you're talking about are care, candor, accountability, and responsibility. So care is we love and care about our people enough, not only to reward them and applaud them for doing great work, but we're brave enough to redirect them as coaches, not managers, when we see opportunities for them to perform better, not protecting our own comfort zone at the expense of other people's development. Unfortunately, because most leaders see themselves as managers, not coaches, and you've got to get rid of that word. If I can share anything with your audience today on, get rid of the word manager. Everybody in your organization is a coach. Their job is to help those they have the privilege to lead play the better game that they can. And in doing that, they better make sure that it's very clear about what winning looks like. In the first book that I wrote with Ken Blanchard, which is called Helping People Win at Work, the byline is, don't mark my paper, help me get an A.
Right.
So do your people in your organization know what an A looks like? Have you discussed that? So care is so important. Care is not about ping pong tables and margarita parties. It's really about you caring about helping that person step into the best version of their personal self. The second one is candor. No lying, no faking, no hiding. I believe most people don't lie in organizations. They fake and they hide. And the reason they fake and hide is because of fear. So get rid of the fear and turn it into learning moments. Accountability, so important. Are we clear? What do you expect from me and what do I expect from you? It's a two-way street. And then responsibility is about something we created, which is really magic. And it's the antidote to what I call the na-na-ni-na-na disease. It's the finger-pointing disease that goes on in the organization.
Yeah.
So we created a statement that we called the Maniac Pledge. And it's the statement of responsibility. And it says, I am responsible for taking actions, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I'm responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. And if I'm doing something others should know about, I am responsible for telling them. That's the antidote to the na-na-ni-na-na disease in organizations, that finger-pointing disease. So it's care, candor, accountability, and responsibility of those 4 pillars.
And I see almost the theme of removing the fear from the atmosphere for all of those 4, or maybe 3 of the 4 to actually happen at a high level.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Transitioning to more of leadership. I'm just going to fire a few leadership questions for you. Okay. So what is the number 1 responsibility of every leader regardless of position in the org chart?
They're a coach. Absolutely. A leader's job is to help those they have the privilege to lead step into a better version of their personal self.
Yeah.
So, and if you think about a great coach never runs on the field and kicks the ball. I know you're a great baseball fan. Have you ever seen a great batting coach run onto the field and take the bat off the batter and try and hit the ball? No way. But unfortunately, in organizations, a lot of leaders are micromanagers. They want to get on, take the bat and play in place of the person. No, their job is to help that person play the best game. So be a great coach.
That's great. Okay, flip side of the question, perhaps. What makes a soul-sucking CEO?
Do you want the full list or only some of them?
Top of the list.
Well, their ego eats their empathy instead of their empathy eating their ego. They're a micromanager. They think they're corporate royalty. They love a fear-based organization. They're a master of control. They're a know-it-all. They don't value learning. They must always be right. They hate feedback, and they don't keep their commitments. There it is.
Man. All right, we've been talking about learning moments as sort of the, it's in the fabric of every leader. You have to welcome learning opportunities to keep growing, as well as helping those around you to learn and grow themselves. So for you, I know you've probably had countless learning moments that have made you a stronger CEO over the years. So does any learning moment stick out for you? And is there a story behind it?
Well, I think one that I learned early on is shut up. I think, again, and it goes back to the fact that, when we're not the smartest person in the room, so don't try and be, don't, and listen with an intent of being influenced instead of wanting to give the answers. So I think one of the big learning moments was, listen to what people say and absorb. And, one thing I learned from my friend Marshall Goldsmith was, when you become the leader or the CEO, your suggestions become orders, whether you like it or not. So as you're leading your organization, remember that, what you say is going to really be interpreted in most cases as an order. So if you're the first person to make a comment in the meeting, remember that the tone of that meeting is now going to be directly aligned with what you have put into that meeting. But, if you're in a meeting and you're facilitating, you're drawing stuff out, Alan Mulally, one of the great CEOs in the world who was, turned Ford around, he says, the person who speaks the least in the meeting is me. And that's so true, because you're there to orchestrate. Think of yourself as the conductor of an orchestra.
Yeah.
Right? The conductor of an orchestra doesn't make any music. What they do is help the players in the orchestra pit play their best instrument. Yeah. That's your job.
Yeah. Facilitation. Yeah. And coaching. All right. We need a good Garry story. So you once rode a horse to Wall Street dressed in full knight's armor. What happened there?
That was fun. That was the WD-40 company's 50th birthday. And, we were talking about how do we really show the value of the brand, and the brand itself is a secret formula. The formula of the base of the product has never been disclosed. It's a bit like, Kentucky Fried Chicken and Coke. And so I said, well, I think we should look at protecting that. So we came up with an idea, and I ended up going to New York, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, I got on a horse and I rode down into Times Square on a horse in a suit of armor to protect the brand that had delivered so much value over time to the users, the shareholders, and the people within the company. And the other thing that was great about it was that, people in the organization said, "You're going to do what?" but you're the CEO. Why would you do that? And I said, exactly why I'm doing it, because I want to show that, I'm vulnerable and I'm happy to do, the unusual things to support our people.
Yeah, that's great. I love that visual, by the way. And I also advocate for protecting the culture. It's probably easier to get to getting to the culture that you want. The hard part is actually maintaining and staying there, right? So you need to be able to protect. We need to be those knights in those shiny armors to protect the culture against people that violate the non-negotiables of the culture, those shared values, those beliefs, etc. That make
Oh,
yeah.
that's totally right. And, I talk about it, but I grew up in Australia. I went to a high school called Des Moines Boys High School. And back one day in my science class, my teacher gave me a petri dish. And they said, what we're going to do is we're going to grow culture in this petri dish. And there are two things you've got to remember. One is, what are the ingredients that you need to put into the petri dish to grow the culture? And then you, as the owner of the petri dish, have to feed the good ingredients, but you have to be brave enough to attack the toxins before they destroy the culture. And that's where a lot of leaders fall down, is we are not brave enough to attack the toxins. We have a high performing person in the organization that's always meeting their sales or revenue goals, but they're a complete and total wreck to the culture. But we forgive them. Well, guess what? That means that everybody else in the organization says, I can be that, that disruptive person. All that matters here is the results. And then you create this toxic, sick culture in your petri dish in your organization. That's cancer in the organization. You've got to deal with it. A high performer who is creating a bad culture is really dangerous, because, the fish rots from the head.
Garry, I don't know if too many people know this, but the WD-40 company had one of the highest employee retention rates of any company. I think you were up there in the 96, 97 percentile, somewhere around there. So you've probably already mentioned some of the reasons as to why that was, but how would you boil down why your retention was so high?
It was a people-centric organization. We understood that, we needed to create a place where people went to work every day and they felt safe and they enjoy what they do. So it was a people-first mindset. We had brave accountability and behavior. We had a clearly defined, authentic purpose. We had a hierarchical set of values. We had transparency and a simple vision. We had learning moments that reduced fear. We respected belonging, acceptance, and connectedness. And we lived on those 4 pillars of care, candor, accountability, and responsibility.
That's great. Okay, before we transition to our speed round and end this episode, is there anything that we have not covered that you absolutely have to get out? Like my listeners have to know this. Anything?
Well, I think the thing that's important to know is that as a leader, any dumbass can build a great culture if you consistently exercise the environment that needs to be in place. And this is not a one-time event. This is hard work. A lot of people say it's the soft stuff. It's not the soft stuff. It's the hard stuff. And, if it was easy, we wouldn't have 70% of people going to work every day disengaged or actively disengaged. That's why people don't do it, because it's not soft and easy. It's hard. It's an everyday commitment to building a place where people belong. They know they matter. They have a high degree of psychological safety, and they can make choices. And as a leader, that's not easy. That's hard. It's simple. It's not easy, and time is not your friend.
Right. All right, strap on your seatbelt. Speed round time. Here we go. A good book you would recommend right now?
Well, it's one that I talk about all the time, and it's age old. It's Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten by Robert Fulghum. If you read that and put those simple practices to work in an organization, you'll build a great culture.
if you were not a CEO at WD-40, what would you have done for a living?
Um, Probably been a teacher.
Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of what you do now as a coach, right?
Yeah.
A lot of teachable moments, learning moments there. All right, who inspires you right now?
Um, well, I don't know that I can put any one person on that name. If you've been around as long as I've been around, along the way, you get to gather great people around you that you've learned from, and whether it be Ken Blanchard or Marshall Goldsmith or, the Dalai Lama or Aristotle or whoever. So I don't think there's ever, one hero. I think there's a lot of people that along the way you gather, bits of information or bits of learning from. So, um, yeah, I don't really like the Academy Awards of heroes.
Right. I don't know if you'll like this question then. Name a person, dead or alive, that you'd like to have dinner with.
Nelson Mandela.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
I love his movie Invictus.
Yeah.
And I use his quote a lot. It's always impossible until it's done.
Mm. Something nobody knows about Garry Ridge.
I was once a radio disc jockey.
Love it. What kind of music did you spin?
Actually, it was a more of a information magazine type program. It was in Sydney, Australia. It was Sunday morning from 9 till 12. 2CCR FM 90.5, Garry and Les Ridge over the hills on a Sunday morning.
That's great, Garry. All right. Your biggest hope for the rest of 2025?
That we'll create a place in the world where peace and love is more important than fear. My purpose right now is I help leaders build cultures of belonging where love, forgiveness, and learning inspire a happy, more connected world.
Mm.
And we need a happier, more connected world.
Yeah.
And don't give up saying we can't do something about it. We can all do a little today to make someone's life a little happier. So let's do that, and let's start a movement of happiness, because there's a lot of conflict right now, and
Yeah.
our grandkids don't need that.
Nope, they don't. All right, you've survived the speed round. Okay, Garry, we bring the whole episode down to two questions. And the first one, we've already touched on, and you just mentioned love and peace. And it is the love question for leaders, okay? How do I lead with more actionable, practical love day in and day out?
Realize it's not about you. It's about the privilege you have to lead others and the difference you can make in their life.
Bring us home. What's that one thing, that final key takeaway that we can bring home with us?
Life's a gift. Don't send it back unwrapped.
That's great. The book again is called Any Dumbass Can Do It. Get it wherever books are sold. Garry, if people want to connect with you, learn more about you, where can they go?
Follow me on LinkedIn. I post there regularly, sharing my School of Dumbassery, and it's all learning lessons that I've had and scar tissue that I've accumulated over 25 years. So follow me on LinkedIn, or go to my website, www.thelearningmoment.net. And if you go there, you can actually take the Dumbass quiz. Link on the quiz, answer the questions, and you'll get your scale of dumbassery. And I will then also send you a PDF of a workbook, playbook that you can start right away in your organization to build great cultures and help people go home happy.
Garry, it's been an honor. Finally, gosh, so glad we did this. And hey, you exceeded my expectations. I knew this was going to be a real down to earth, no BS kind of conversation. And yeah, that's what we got. That's because you're here. So I appreciate you very much being here today. Thank you for your time.
Well, I want to thank you for what you do, because it's folks like you that help us, amplify the message that people are important and the world is about creating happiness and love. So thank you.
Yeah.
You're the most important person in this conversation.
Oh, Gary, appreciate that. Gang, you can keep the conversation going on social media with hashtag Love in Action Podcast, and look for my show notes. I'm going to make sure that Gary's info is there so you can take the quiz and all that stuff, including a YouTube link so you can watch us banter back and forth. All of that you can find on my website at marcelschwantes.com. For Gary and yours truly, remember, in the end, love wins. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Love in Action podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it, subscribe, and leave us a review. Until next time, don't forget, the future of leadership is love in action. Believe it, practice it, and watch your leadership and business flourish.